Hey, Criminal Biscuits. I finally did it. I'm Leslie from Books, Chris and Purrs. If this is your first time here, I talk all things spoiler when it comes to Interview the Vampire. It's been a couple of weeks since the season 2 wrapped up, but this is just my first chance I've had uh, to talk about it. I just had a whole bookish agenda I was trying to keep up with this summer, and so this is my chance. um, and to talk about season 2, I happened to see an interview with Levin Atkin. It may have been with Autumn Brown. I'm not sure because I've seen so many interviews. And they happened to mention, as they directed some episodes in season 1 and some in season 2, that there was this like I'm kind of like boiling it down to like a narrative thread in regards to mirrors and Claudia. And I felt like that was like a light bulb moment. I'm so glad that he said that because I had no idea how I was going to talk about these 2 seasons. And I thought that was a great um, through line for all the characters. So whether I'm talking about mirroring or mirrors with a specific character, it's just going to be all literal and I guess you could say like symbolic. How these um, kind of like these relationships kind of echo each other. Behaviors get repeated, and yeah, there's a lot of mirroring. So I was very thankful for that because I actually had no idea how I was going to tackle this. Anyways, well, let's get started. Um, all right, so this is yes, season 2 wrap up. Here we go. I'm going to be here in the little corner talking. Um, and even this is like something I really loved about the cinematography, the directing. The first 2 in the background are of Louis and Daniel at the same table, and we see that like reflection. They're like mirroring each other. They're looking at each other. That they're at one table. And in season 2, what do we see? We now see that now Armand is at the table, and they all have this reflection going on. And honestly, even Louis, he's he's telling a story. He's not necessarily telling the truth, right? Um, and there's the mask and the story that he does want to tell. And then I kind of feel like maybe the reflection is a point of honesty that he has to work his way towards. And I'm starting off with Claudia. I have so many I have so many slides with just Claudia. So when she was 14, we see her looking in a mirror, and this is a point where she's turned and she's just, young. She's believing what her guardians are telling her. And also, that's just a position that she's been put on, right? Her human life is also traumatic, like so many of these other characters. So she's really she's with them out of survival mode too, right? And so she's writing in her diary, but she's also looking to the mirror as a friend. Um, and she's someone that is suspended in a state that she doesn't know yet, right? And then when her birthday comes along, and by then I think she's like 18 on her birthday, she starts asking questions. She's looking in the mirror and she's just kind of wondering, like, when is she going to fit into this thing? And her guardians are what? They're kind of playing hot potato with that conversation. They don't want to have it. And the one below where she's just like gleefully looking into the mirror is when she, has a crush for the first time. She's interested in a boy. And this actually reminds me of like a horror version of Anne of Green Gables. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I know there's like a version on Netflix that I'm not really too fond of, but whether you've read the books or you've seen the old version, I don't know when it came out. Was it the 90s? It's very old, but it's a version that I like. And Anne is a character that was orphaned, and every time she gets taken to a family, they really just use her as not really like a family member, but somebody to use for labor. And so she creates this bosom buddy and reflection. And that's the only friend that she has. And so that's really like a survival tactic for the character to just keep going and staying optimistic um, in the face of harsh realities, right? And so by the time she really starts to unravel and is faced with who she is and the answers that Claudia isn't getting from Louis and Lestat, um, at one point she screams and the mirror breaks. And this could be like two things. This could be like we really see her exhibiting her strength, but also how she's this broken thing, which I think Lestat would refer her to like a bird, and people would just rip her to shreds. Other vampires would if they got a hold of her, and she's just like frustrated, upset, and the last one is actually after Louis and Lestat have their big blowout fight, and she looks in the mirror, and Louis is in the other room, so she doesn't know what's going on in the other room. She all we've seen season 2, so we know what they both have done to each other, Lestat and Louis. It's not just one. I mean, it's very abusive. Let's be honest, but um, there's a lot going on that she doesn't know. But you know what? They're both a problem. I'm not trying to make excuses for them. But there's this broken piece of mirror on the ground, and Claudia sees it, and there's like a little bit of blood coming down her forehead. But Louis is saying it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And that's the thing with Lestat and Louis is they spend so much time lying to her, both of them. And that's something that Louis, at this point in the story, has not come to terms with, like his part of his responsibilities in what happened with Claudia and in his relationship. And so she's looking into this mirror, and the mirror is the one telling her the truth, right? Someone could be telling her that it's going to be okay, but it's not going to be okay. And that's something that she sees. She now sees this once again a broken piece of mirror, and is faced with the truth. Um, and then threading this through season 2, when she gets to Paris, she meets someone and she pays for her clothes to be tailored in a way that she sees herself as she really is versus like what the world sees. And so in doing so, the first outfit that she has with a it looks like a glass of wine. Maybe it's a glass of blood. I never thought about that. Um, there's this curiosity and maybe like some hopefulness, and finally seeing herself tailored in a way that Claudia actually sees themselves. And in the middle photo, it's kind of dark, but Madeline is there tailoring her clothes. And so there's a mix of the blue ribbon in her hair, which is what Armand wants to project onto her, versus what Madeline is seeing in her in design, right? And then on the corner, that's really like the fulfillment of what Madeline sees her as as a vision of her as an adult woman. Um, and actually, the bottom slide opposite, the closest one to me, is really it's a moment of needing to be consoled because Louis is asking about Bruce, and so what Claudia is having to do is like really hold it together because she doesn't want Louis to see her emotion, but who can see it but the mirror as she puts on lipstick. Um, so yeah, it's a constant evolution, a place for her to look at truth, even when it's really painful. And then, oh, my slide got a little bit messed. Sorry, I messed up with the text, but that's the best I could do. And then we're gonna go on and talk about Madeline and Claudia, um, and how they mirror the relationship in some ways, maybe hopefully in a more healthy way, to Lestat and Louis as far as like how they met. So when Madeline and Claudia meet, there's like this friction. You know, Madeline says like, "Respect my time." They're automatically like arguing, and later on when Claudia meets her again, they're like back and forth friction again. They run into each other, and Claudia's like, "Oh, well, you didn't make an impression on me." But we know it's not that. It's quite the opposite. And as we know, her parents, Louis and Lestat, there was friction when they met, right? Um, but there was this spark between them. There's this attraction, and Louis even said like there was emasculation and admiration in equal measure. So there was like this tumultuous feelings of like attraction, but also friction. And so I find that very interesting that Claudia and Madeline meet each other like in the very similar way. I mean, let's be honest, even Madeline makes a comment about Claudia right away about her being a young girl and what she looks like. So she does kind of like um, do this kind of like dismissive put down in a way, right? Before she really even knows her. And onto um, hmm, mirroring, which would be like how when Madeline ends up being on the verge of being SA'd, similar to what happened to Claudia. Um, she comes in and saves her, but that moment of revealing herself is similar to like how Lestat and Louis revealed themselves to each other. But once again, we have like this toxic um, existence for Lestat and Louis, as where there is a contrast, right? They are mirroring each other, but there's still that contrast of, um, Louis just stabbed Lestat from behind, and that doesn't happen with Claudia and Madeline, but she's still revealing her monstrous self, right? Because Madeline has done that. Madeline has revealed that they were in uh, done something that's like a faux pas, um, and also would deem Madeline a monster, right? How could you imagine with this particular war uh, having a tryst with someone that's done like unimaginable, inhumane things to people? But again, that's echoed in the person that Madeline chooses again, right? So this is also Claudia saying like, okay, you've revealed your monstrous self. I'm revealing my monstrous self. So why don't we just be monsters together? And that's definitely what Lestat did with Louis. Um, and then with Madeline, we see how what happened to her in the past, that transgression then puts her on trial, right? And it's something that's so terrible that you think that that's never going to happen again. But once again, now she's found someone else dangerous to love, and then she's put on trial once again. So there's this constant mirroring, even like within a season. We only have Madeline for so many episodes, and they still use that like technique, and it was just like, how is this still devastating again? Yeah, so I totally had to break this up into 2 slides to make this work. Get the next one. Let's see. This is finding me a little bit. All right. An additional one for Claudia. Sorry, I had to break up the two slides, so it kind of got a little mixed up. Um, but for Claudia, once again, we see that, oh, let me tell you how impactful this was for me because I read the books. So I haven't been critical in any way of the show. Like I'm here for the ride. I'm not like a book purist or anything. And so I knew the way that Louis um found and like saved Claudia was different from the books, right? It's a different time period. There was a plague. He went and decided to have a little nibble on Claudia for lunch when she was like a toddler and then ran off. But on the show, they put Claudia in a fire, and I'm so annoyed with myself that I did not make the connection because by the time we see the season finale, I was in tears hearing Louis say something that he can't even finish saying, and that is the fact that he saved Claudia from a fire only to have her die by a fire. And it was just wildly poetic, tragic. Um, there's that technique of mirroring again, like this is what happens in the past and it's going to happen again. And so her death in this particular way was inevitable. And so, yeah, when he says save her from a fire, so a half century later, she could, and dot, 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 like he couldn't even get through it. It's just like you can't even say it out loud. And, seeing it on screen was tragic. I never want to see that episode again. I did have to go and grab these photos, but man, oh man, it's just a constant mirroring, a constant echoing um, of these tragedies and like these behaviors that really just just pierced my soul. Oh, and so Lestat and Louis, hold on tight because I am going to connect these. It's just going to take a moment. Um, so I don't even know what to call this section. How about let's just say what the problem is with Lestat, How I Met Your Father, but like the horror version. um, so the problem with Lestat, let's say this, for these two seasons that come in fruition in the second season. Lestat is someone that when he meets Louis, Lestat falls in love with everything. He could fall in love. Yeah, he falls in love with everyone. But when he sees Louis, it's like love at first sight. He sees this vicious monster in human form, and he knows, like, I think he can see his trajectory of like, oh, you're gonna be a vampire that lasts. And so when he first meets Louis, he comes off brash and is just admiring that Louis has been able to navigate a society that treats him like an outsider, even though he's not. And there's so much stacked against Louis. And so for him, he feels like, well, that's the person to be an ideal relationship that will that this person will stand the test of time. Because a vampire's life is very lonely and it's very long. And so what is time? Time is almost timeless, but it's also painful, but also it's a blink of an eye. It's all those things. And so he appeals to Louis by saying, like, I see who you really are. This country is primitive and it's picked you clean. But ultimately, like, the problem with Lestat is he's interested in this ideal of a relationship on a surface level. So he wants to be with this person. He marries this person. This is like his forever vampiric husband, but he doesn't actually want to have to put in the work or be there for his partner um, in a way that he needs to be being in an what do you call it? Interracial relationship. Um, to the point where Louis is like trying to explain like a microaggression, and he says, "You don't get. There's some things that you don't get about America, Lestat." And so then Lestat says, "Oh yes, let's have this conversation again," and that's so dismissive because Lestat is not Louis. He doesn't have to walk in his shoes. He doesn't have to live the life that he lives. And so to be so dismissive with something that he does not actually have to engage with. He may be his partner, but he just doesn't have to deal with what he does, and to be so like, I don't know who else to call it other than dismissive, because I feel like it's worse than dismissive. But to say like, "Oh yeah, this again." I'm like, "What do you mean? Like my whole existence?" And it's not Louis' fault. It's everyone else around him, right? And that's a thing that Lestat made a mistake with. He made him a vampire as if that was going to fix things. It doesn't fix anything, because actually Louis isn't the one that needs to be fixed. It's American society that needs to be fixed. Not actually, I should say, like white supremacy America. Like that needs to not exist. Um, and so he gave someone powers. Is dismissive and treats them like I'm the solution. Oh yeah, but also don't take out any government officials, don't take any political figures, don't take out the police. Who do you think's a problem, Lestat? Who do you think is a problem? And that's what's like so frustrating, is that there's like a whole season of him being with someone, he loves them. And I understand that like Louis is miserable, but it all circles back to, but why is he miserable? Like so much of this is like um the social issues that Louis is confronted with, because once again, like Lestat points out, they treat him like an outsider, but like it doesn't fix anything. Him being a vampire doesn't fix anything, and it's like it's just like frustrating, and that's something that season one Lestat was not getting, which brings us on to season two, which then we're echoing and we're mirroring, right, in two different ways. Um, what happened in season one and what happened in season two, which is um, Lestat at this at the trial, he comes to a realization to something that although like I don't feel bad for Lestat, like too little, too late, which is that he wanted Louis to love him, and I think he did. He was just he Louis wasn't happy with so many things he couldn't express it. They both couldn't. They both have like different love languages, and also his his partner is depressed and is suicidal. And so he now realizes during the trial, like, yeah, I try to crush what I couldn't own. And so we're getting another layer onto which Lestat is getting at here, is that he wanted to act like he could be the solution to something, but he was also part of the problem. He offered someone something and then he caged them all over again. And that's something that Claudia was getting at, and we're seeing through like Louis' point of view, but here Lestat gets it. Like all that like petty goading from Claudia, she was right. Th- He was keeping him trapped because he wanted Louis so badly. To the point where when Claudia tries to leave, Lestat is letting that dog lick his hands and put him back in the kennel and says, "Back in your cage, sweetheart," talking to the dog. But the camera, when Lestat is saying that, the camera goes to Claudia, because that's what he's doing to Claudia. That's what he's doing to Louis. Um, and that's something that throughout season one, Lestat always referred to, but we know this through Louis' narration, is that he referred to them as birds. They were his baby birds, and what do you do with birds, right? When you want to domesticate them, you cage them. And so I think in this moment, um, so many things are hitting him. It's too late. It's too little, too late. And that I now think that when it comes to after the trial, um, when when it's the three of them being petty, right? When it's Armand, when it's Louis, when it's Lestat, and they're in Magnet's tower, when Louis says, you know, you do whatever you're gonna do, this is your punishment. I'm gonna be with Armand. I'm not gonna be with you, and miss me because you can't have me, and I'm gonna curse you with that vampire loneliness that you're talking about. I I know that I get that Lestat is kind of like miffed at that moment because he knows he's the one that saved Louis, but we have to remember what he just is talking about in the trial, what he had an epiphany about. He cannot crush what he does not own. He cannot own Louis. Um Louis has his own agency and can make the best decisions or make mistakes, but that's agency that Louis has over himself. So, what is he going to say in that moment? What could he possibly say? Stay with me. I saved you. None of that would have happened anyways. They were not in a good place. Claudia just died. Um, so I think I back on this moment now that I've had time to think about it, not just about three people being petty, but Lestat resigned to the fact that there's nothing he could really do about it. It's like, fine, go with the gremlin. We'll see how long that holds. Like, you do you, you figure that out. But in doing so, what happens is there's a mirroring of Louis's life with Lestat and Louis's life with Armand, which they did with an interior design. What they did with what the building that they're in Dubai represents, which is it's a tomb. It is a casket. Um, and as we see the interior design of Armand and Louis' bedroom, it's to me it's more like a stage, but it's also like a cage, right? And so what Louis did was he just switched one cage for another. And so there's that mirroring of relationships, of the dynamics at play, right? Because Lestat was hiding his powers. Yes, it could be for many reasons. It could be like a control thing. It could also be like he knows there's such a huge power imbalance, a vampiric power imbalance in his relationship that he's like, let me just like, I'm gonna, I can't show him all my powers because then he'll get scared. And then there's already imbalance in a relationship because of the society that they're in and how Louis is treated. Let me not like make it more exasperated in this way. Yeah, exasperated. And then we have Armand and Louis, and Armand's 500 years old, okay? He does show his powers, and but they're constantly having this like sub-dom relationship. And so there's this constant like playing out of their um, power imbalance. And I think maybe that's the way they're trying to balance it out. But also, Armand wants control anyways because he's controlling and manipulative. And so much of their existence is like orchestrated, right? Um, just to also out of spite, but it's something. The Armand dynamic. Um, there is mirroring that goes on, but with like the behaviors when it comes to Armand. When he first comes across Lestat and Nikki, he wants Lestat. Like in the narrative, he's telling Daniel Malloy, he's saying something like, "This person can exist." Like so much of Armand's existence has been in a cult for hundreds of years, right? So it's hard to shake that existence, to shake that worldview. And when he comes across Lestat, he wants Lestat, but Nikki is there. So he constantly treats the people that he wants a relationship with as anyone else in their orbit as like an obstacle. So Lestat's with Nikki, so let's torture Nikki, which he does. I'm gonna steal him and torture him. And that's how he's gonna get Lestat, which we'll see how that really played out in season 3. And then when Louis and Claudia show up, he now wants Louis, and there's a couple of things going on with that dynamic. He must sense that this Louis that they're the Lestat's fledglings, right? Claudia's in the way. She's the obstacle. So what does he do? He gets rid of her. And now what we're seeing some of, but not all of, in episode 5 of season 2, which is Don't Be Afraid, Just Start the Tape, is that Louis instigates in a drug-fueled haze that Daniel is more fascinating than decades with Armand. So he sees that Louis is interested in Daniel. So now he's like, all right, well, now I'm going to torture him. So this is constant repeating of behavior, constant mirroring of behavior on Armand's part. And it's just like, I get it. We're gonna learn in season 3. Maybe we'll see that like he had a traumatic background, but they all do. Like at some point, you gotta take accountability, Armand. It can't be all woe was me. So this is why I commit violence. But then it's kind of like, oh my gosh, that's a tale of all of them, isn't it? But yeah, oh Armand. And also, something that we really have to be confronted with Louis, which is that in season 1, Claudia wrote Lestat's last words in blood, as she enjoys doing, and it was Louis, put me in my coffin, and that was like at the end of towards the end of season 1. But then when we go to episode 5 again of season 2, we hear Louis is the one that's saying, to his partner, put me in my coffin. And so there's this mirroring of these like abusive relationships and where they're at. And oh, there's always a third. In the past, it was Claudia. Right now, it's Daniel. And so it's just a wild, wild dynamic. Oh, so now that I've had to think about this, why is this interview happening? Well, the answer has been mirrored in season 1 early on and just echoed in season 2. So, episode 1, Louis says the vampire is bored to Daniel in Dubai after all these years. He's saying he's bored. There's a pandemic. They took there were 3 cars just to drive Daniel from the airport to where they live in Dubai. Why 3 cars? Why is so much needed for a little old Daniel, as he said? And in San Francisco, it's not just about, we learn it's not just about Louis being bored, but it's because Armand is boring to him. In San Francisco, that's where he says, you're boring. And Daniel's getting older in age. He doesn't have much time left. So it's just not about the tale. I really don't think it's just about the tale that Louis wants to divulge. It's about Daniel. He was a fascinating boy, and he just wants time with him before it's over. And also, very much so throughout this is Louis being confronted with truth and reconciliation. Truth, because at that moment that he says it in season 1, he doesn't I don't think he even, like, occurs to him. It's about him he has to be confronted with himself and his responsibilities and what happened so that he could begin to forgive himself and in turn forgive Lestat. Um, because how could you begin to, I don't know, forgive someone if you don't forgive yourself? How could you offer that? And so that's where we end up. So we start in season 1 early on, um, either in episode 1 or 2 with truth and reconciliation as the agenda, or that's what Louis is saying. And that is legitimately what happens. He really confronts himself with the truth. He goes to find Lestat, and it's like a confession, really, a confession of his part. Because even in the narration, he does tell Daniel that he enjoyed goading Lestat, but it's like I think it really there's like another layer to it of denial that he had to take off to confront what he was doing. And so yeah, again, they're both culpable. Um, love the show, and that last scene of them embracing each other, Lestat and Louis, is so earned. It's like really beautiful. So yeah. Season 3 predictions. I'm gonna just have a few, and then I'm gonna let it go. Because there's so much that's just I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna handle. I took this moment from season 1 because Lestat is finally discussing his past again. Only until he's humbled will he reveal anything. Um, and so I think we're gonna see Magnus. I think we're gonna see the horrors of what happened to Lestat. I'm hoping that we get Wolf Killer. I hope we kind of see um, what happened to him and get. We don't have to necessarily see, but his family doesn't survive. We're gonna get Gabrielle. Sorry, Gabrielle. Um, and so yeah, I look forward to seeing that unfold. We're definitely gonna get him and Armand again. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the tone's gonna be like. It's gonna be wildly different. Um, but I look forward to that. But I'm just thinking about that and thinking about how he was turned. Um, I still, it's just like I don't know how else to say it. Like there's gonna be a lot of like empathy, I guess we could say, for his character for all the terrible things that he's been through. But again, it's more of like to understand the psychology of the character rather than to absolve him of all the terrible things that he did and responsible for when it comes to Claudia and Louis. All right. And here's another prediction. Season 2, episode 5 was just so revealing. So in that season 2, episode 5, Daniel says that he has a skill for getting people to open up. And Armand wants him to teach him to be fascinating. And Daniel says that he thinks he's fascinating. So there's like 3 different things going on here. And Daniel even says, "You can read my mind. You go in there. You're going to be able to know that I think you're fascinating." And I think this isn't just coming from a place of clearly being tortured, but I think he actually believes that. And there is a darkness in Daniel as Armand reveals and reads his mind. Um, this is the thing that I think is going to happen. I think this might be a nod to how Devil's Minion is going to be peppered throughout. It's not going to be like just boiled down to like one moment, but I really do think that they had a relationship in the 70s this is what I'm wondering. I First of all, I wanna see Daniel being turned because I think that is gonna be revealing of their past, and at the end of season 2, Daniel even asks, like, "Oh, have you heard from my maker?" I don't think he's just asking out of, like, being frustrated. I think he remembers things that he's not telling Louis that he remembers, and that's why, he I think that's why he asked. Um, I think that Daniel used his skill of getting people to open up to bring other men home to him and Armand. That's what I think was going on in the past. And I don't know what this relationship would start out as. I don't know if it's just because Armand is just like so vulnerable and really does want to be taught how to be fascinating for Louis. And so he's pursuing this kind of like tortuous relationship with Daniel. But I telling you, I think it's gonna come up again. Um and so this is the other thing I was wondering is that Louis told Armand in this time period, um, you're young with a reporter with a point of view. And so I always thought um that's how Daniel already felt. And that became his mantra because that was an important moment in his life. Even if Daniel doesn't remember that moment necessarily correctly. But there is a theory that when Louis tells him that it's almost like he like glamored him in a way. So how much do you think his career was by his own volition, or was it more like compulsive? And I also think that Daniel was one of their boys that we saw pictures of. So I definitely think that as a journalist that he was getting funneled money, whether he knew it or not. Actually, I don't think he knew it. He could have been getting funded money anonymously to have the career that he wanted by these multimillionaires and just didn't know it was because of them. That's what I think. Um, but yeah, so I look forward to that wild relationship that they two have. And that's the end of my slides. That's my wrap up. There's so much more that I could talk about, but you know what? If I did, I would never get this done. And with that noted, because there's so much other stuff that I didn't talk about, I am going to have a segment. It's going to like slowly roll out, just like this took a while to come out. I am going to talk about the adaptation, but if I try to do it, I'm just going to be all over the place. So I'm going to tackle one character at a time. I brought this up before, but I'm legitimately actually getting to it now. Um, yeah, so I'm going to start off with Daniel first, Claudia second, and all the other characters will come through sporadically as time passes. That's what I'll do. But those are like the first two I could tackle because I also like on a periphery just want to like refresh my memory from the books. Um, so yeah, I think that would be like a great way for us to occupy our time while we wait for season 3. And that's all I could really handle right now anyways. I did want to start watching another show and maybe have some live um segments because I really miss the live chats, but I just don't think I'd be able to get to it. Not in any manageable way. And lastly, since my channel is more like on the booktube side of things, something that I like to do when I wrap up a book project is shout out some other accounts. Um, I'm gonna do that. So basically, I'm done. So if you want to skip, go ahead. But oh my gosh, there's a panel of ladies that have given me life. Let me go to their channel. Give me a second so I could find it. Um, all right, we're gonna do this together. How do I share? All right, everyone. The first account, but there's like several, um, is My Sweet Perspective. Watch With Me LB was on one of the panel segments that they had. And that's how I found out about a group of ladies that have had me laughing so hard and have the best insights when it comes to Interview the Vampire. And so I'll show you the segment. They had a segment where they watched season one, they watched season two, so they rewatched season one and would have panel chats after. And is this it? I think this is it. I'm gonna go to this because there's several ladies we can look up. But in celebration, they kind of wore like cosplay for their outfits. They wore like all white to kind of like they did in the ball. Oh, where is it? I have to go to her live section. That's what it is. And it was just like so much fun, so much hilarity. Ooh. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my God, this is so good. All right, so I'm going to this one so you can see all their accounts. There's Struggle Reviews TV, there's See the Superior, and there is Fifth Wall Studios. They all dressed up. They had me how they're so funny. And they cover so much more like television content. You know, that's not really my thing. I only cover Into the Vampire because I love the books. And some of the ladies have also read the books, so just know that it's a spoiler discussion. But if you want to, if you're need to continue breathing life into this show, watching their channels, all their channels, is an absolute delight. Again, there's also Watch With Me LB. She's not in this one, but oh my goodness, they just had me howling. It was just like so much fun. There's also oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's also Drunk Bantha. The Drunk Banthas channel. They have talked about Interview the Vampire. It was like a while, but they cover all like sorts of nerd talk and have casual chats. They just have like a little bit of everything. And that's also a channel I really enjoyed. I'm trying to figure out. And there's also two other channels I wanted to talk about, and it's Frank. Here we go. Yeah, he can tell he just watched it. I haven't seen it yet. um, do not spoil it. If you want to watch their content, do not spoil it from him. Frank Freezy is reacting to the first season. They haven't seen it yet. So if you like reactions, his are really good. He has great insights. And there's oh my god, there's another one. Oh dang. I'm gonna forget the name. Hold on. Maybe he has it in here. It's Taco something. Uh, there's somebody else that I just started watching. Um, Here we go. I cannot find it, but I'll put it in the description. It's something taco. It's some silly name. Taco React something that I started watching and it was just so much fun. I tell you right now, since I'm waiting for Into the Vampire to come back every day, every day is a day closer to seeing it. I'm watching their reactions, and the other gentleman, I can't think of his name, but he has such like great. Both of them have such great insights into the show, and I love it. I love hearing everyone's opinions. I live for it. So yeah, if you have somehow stayed this entire time, thank you. Let me know what other narrative threads or any type of mirroring you noticed in the show. I know I didn't talk about all of it, but that's just for my own sanity because I could just keep talking about these characters over and over again. So yeah, if you like this, please um, subscribe, please comment. I could talk about the show all day. It's my favorite show ever, ever, ever. Um, yeah, so look forward to the breakdowns per character. They're coming. I'm working on it. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for showing up. And I miss you all. I miss talking about our live shows. But yeah, thank you, and I'll see you in the chat.